Hey, good evening, guys. What's going on today? I want to talk to you today about my mission of hope. But before I do that, I have to set the stage a little bit. The years are about the early 1990s, and I had just finished respiratory care practitioner school, and I was this eager respiratory therapist waiting, ready to get out there and conquer the world. I knew in my mind that I knew everything there was to know about respiratory care medicine, but never could I have been entirely wrong. I think it happens. It's a phenomena that happens to every graduating student, knowing that they think they know everything, right? Before I do that and continue my story, I'm going to set the stage for you a little bit. It was a medical intensive care unit back in the early 1990s where I used to work at. And I wanted to join the medical intensive care unit. For those of you that understand me, the medical intensive care unit is a facility. It's an area of the hospital that harbors or manages long-term ventilator care, critical care patients. Well, I was ready to go into there. I was so eager to get into there. Finally, when I surrounded myself with the right people, the right doctors and the right nurses, they allowed me to go into the medical intensive care unit. I was getting ready to go and treat everybody and conquer the world, like I said before. Inside this unit, they had this charge nurse, and for the sake of privacy, I'm gonna call him David. David was a charge nurse that was the epitome of a hardcore post-military veteran that became a nurse, and there was no getting through David or getting by David or going over David. David was hardcore, man. Immediately we bumped heads because there was no way that a nurse was gonna stop a respiratory care practitioner from accomplishing his mission. I used to go home worried sick about this guy. I did not like him right off the bat. Day in and day out, week in and week out, David would make my life miserable, making me understand that I did not know what I didn't know. But you know what? He was correct. One night I went home, thought about making David my friend, so the next morning I came in, asked David for an apology, and asked him if he would take me under his wing and mentor me. David responded with, "That's the best thing you could have asked me to do. Now get ready to unlearn your stupidity." Yeah, he had a way with words. So I did. I unlearned my stupidity, pretended to have a baseline. No, not pretended. Acted on a baseline and started to learn things off of David. David's mission was to give hope to patients where there was no hope almost for these patients. Day in and day out, we would see the same patients going up and going down, rising up and coming down, and there was no end to the madness. We had a common patient, David and I, and for the sake of privacy, again, we're gonna call her Maggie. Maggie was a long-term ventilated patient that had been in the hospital for such a very long time that we got to know her dearly. And when I mean dearly, for those of you healthcare professionals that understand me, you know that we endear ourselves to our patients, passion and compassion. We know the ins and outs of their lives and their families and what makes them tick and what makes them laugh. Well, that was Maggie to us. Well, it got to a point in Maggie's medical care that the doctor that was tending to her decided to manage Maggie because of her pulmonary diagnosis with dual ventilation. For those of you that understand what I'm talking about, that means introducing a life support system to Maggie's left lung independent of her right lung, dual ventilation. Well, I went home that night, came back in the morning, only to discover that Maggie had passed away because the lungs were ruptured. Possibly because of her dynamic, not necessarily because of the dual ventilation. Immediately, I look at David. David looks back at me, understands my emotion, takes me by the collar into the next room and orders me to cry, get it out of my system, because I still needed to hope, or give hope to 9 other patients rather. I had never cried so much in my entire life like I did that day. But I regained my composure, walked back out as if nothing had happened, and continued giving hope to several other patients. Let me fast forward time a little bit. I have then since gone on to medical school, came back requested to do rotations in the critical care unit that I started off into. I walked into the unit with my chest out, my head up, and I went in there looking for David because I knew that he was going to be so proud of me. I introduced myself to the staff, told them a little bit about me, looked left, looked right, and asked for David. The charge nurse at the time comes out and asked me if I knew what had happened to David. I said no. Well, David had lost hope in himself. Because of his diagnosis, David took his own life. I stood there wondering how the epitome of hope, the beacon of hope to several and many patients, couldn't fathom the concept to have enough hope for himself that he had to take his own life. I took myself by the collar, went into the other room, and cried again, repeating the scenario that I had done several years before. And I recall what David said: get yourself together because people still need you. Patients still need their hope. So I did just that, regained my composure, walked into the unit, did my rotations, and carried on in life. David will never come to understand or know what he taught me or the hope that he gave me for my mission of hope. I've carried that with me for many, many years. People ask me why I do what I do. I'd have to say that David had a big part in my life, but he'll never know that. I have my mission of hope. What is yours? This is your life coach, Breathing Joe, letting you know that everything is copacetic.